At Vengeful, I was on top of the world. My name's Irene, and after years of grinding 2 jobs, skipped vacations, and pinching every penny, I finally bought my first home. It was my pride, my proof that hard work pays off. But my parents had other plans. They convinced me to put the house in their name, claiming it was just for legal protection. I trusted them. Big mistake. One night, over what I thought was a simple family dinner, they dropped the bomb. They were giving my house to my brother Daniel as a wedding gift for him and his fiancée, Sophia. The words hit like a punch to the gut. My home, my sacrifice, handed over like it meant nothing. Stunned, I didn't fight, I just walked away. If you've ever been blindsided by family, hit that subscribe button and share your story below. You're not alone. The moment I stepped out of that house, my house, I felt the weight of betrayal pressing against my chest. But I didn't let it break me. At 25, I'd already learned that fighting with my family, people who'd so casually handed my hard-earned dream to my brother Daniel, was a losing game. So, I walked away. No shouting, no tears, just the quiet hum of my car's engine as I drove into the night, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. I wasn't running. I was choosing myself, maybe for the first time. If my parents thought I'd crumble without that house, they were about to see just how wrong they were. As a freelancer scraping by in a cutthroat industry, I'd built my life on grit, and I wasn't about to let their betrayal define me. Finding a new place to live wasn't easy, but I didn't have the luxury of wallowing. That same night, I scoured listings online, my eyes burning from exhaustion but fueled by defiance. By dawn, I'd secured a short-term lease on a tiny one-bedroom apartment in a less than glamorous part of town. It was cramped, with barely enough room for a bed and a desk, but it was mine. No one could take it away. The deposit and first month's rent ate into my savings, the same savings I'd poured into that house. But I didn't let myself dwell on the loss. This was my fresh start, a blank canvas for the life I'd build without their strings attached. I unpacked my few belongings, hung a cheap mirror on the wall, and told myself this was temporary. I'd make it work. I always did. Work became my lifeline. As a content creator, I'd spent years hustling, pitching clients, staying up late to meet deadlines, and learning to market myself in a crowded digital space. But now, I doubled down. I took on extra projects, said yes to every opportunity, and poured my energy into climbing the ladder. My parents had called me independent, like it was an excuse to favor Daniel, but I turned that label into my superpower. I volunteered for high-profile campaigns, networked with industry folks, and pushed myself harder than ever. 3 months later, my hustle paid off. A promotion to a lead creative role, complete with a raise that finally let me breathe. For the first time, my paycheck wasn't stretched thin covering someone else's mistakes. Every dollar was mine, earned through my own sweat and determination. Living lean had taught me how to prioritize, a skill every entrepreneur knows too well. I budgeted meticulously, cut out non-essentials, and started rebuilding my savings. My tiny apartment, once a symbol of loss, became my sanctuary, a place where I could dream bigger than the 4 walls around me. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving, proving to myself that I didn't need that house or my family's approval to succeed. Meanwhile, my phone stayed quiet. No calls, no texts from my parents or Daniel. It was as if I'd vanished from their lives the moment I walked out. At first, it stung the silence, confirming I'd never been their priority. But soon, I realized their absence was a gift. It gave me space to focus, to grow, to become the person I'd always known I could be. I wasn't waiting for their apologies or their validation. I was building a future they couldn't touch, and deep down, I knew their perfect plan was about to unravel. For months after I walked away from that house, my phone stayed silent. No calls, no texts, no apologies from my parents or Daniel. It was as if I'd been erased from their lives the moment I refused to beg for what was mine. As a freelancer in my mid-20s, hustling to make a name for myself in the creative world, I'd grown used to handling things on my own. Their silence didn't surprise me, it hurt, sure, but it also freed me. I threw myself into my work, building my brand, pitching clients, and saving every penny I could. My tiny apartment, my new projects, my grind, they were my world now. I told myself I didn't need them, and for a while, I believed it. But deep down, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that their perfect little plan, the one that shoved me aside, was too good to last. The first hints of trouble came subtly, like whispers I almost ignored. A coworker mentioned in passing that she'd seen my mom at the grocery store, looking off, her usual polished demeanor replaced by something frazzled. Then a distant cousin messaged me on Facebook, asking if everything was okay with my family because my dad seemed tense at a recent gathering. I brushed it off. They'd gotten what they wanted, hadn't they? My house, handed to Daniel and Sophia on a silver platter, complete with balloons and a congratulatory banner. Why should I care if they were struggling? But curiosity gnawed at me, and late one night, I opened Instagram. Daniel and Sophia had been insufferable after getting the house, flooding their feeds with photos of their new life furniture hauls, cozy date nights, captions gushing about their blessed start. Then, nothing. Weeks of silence. The last post, a cryptic photo of them at a restaurant, read, "Crazy how fast things change." Comments from their friends hinted at trouble. "Hope you guys pull through," one said. My stomach twisted. Something was wrong. I didn't have to wait long for confirmation. A week. Later, my phone lit up with my mom's name. I stared at it, letting it ring until it went to voicemail. An hour later, she called again, then again. By morning, my dad was calling, followed by Daniel. Their persistence was relentless, a stark contrast to the months of radio silence. I ignored them all, my finger hovering over the block button. They'd treated me like I was invisible when they gave away my home. Why should I jump when they snapped their fingers now? But then came a text from Daniel that made me pause. "I know you're pissed, but we need to talk. It's important." Daniel, the golden child who never admitted he needed help, was reaching out. That alone told me their world was crumbling. I didn't respond, but the message lingered, a crack in the wall I'd built between us. As an entrepreneur, I'd learned to trust my instincts, and they were screaming that this wasn't about reconciliation. They needed something likely, something big. My mind raced, piecing together the clues. The house. It had to be the house. Daniel's history of gambling, his reckless bets on sports and poker nights, flashed in my memory. I'd always suspected my parents bailed him out, but now, with my house in his hands, had he burned through everything? The thought made my blood boil, but it also sparked a grim satisfaction. They'd chosen him over me, banking on his stability, and now their gamble was failing. I didn't know the details yet, but I knew one thing. They were desperate, and I held the power. For the first time in months, I felt the scales tipping back in my favor. Whatever was coming, I'd face it on my terms, not theirs. After months of silence, the barrage of calls and texts from my family finally wore me down, not out of guilt, but curiosity. As a dos-cinco-year-old freelancer who'd clawed my way to stability, I'd learned to trust my gut, and it told me their desperation wasn't about mending fences. Something big was wrong, and I needed to see it for myself. So, I drove back to the house I'd once called mine, the one I'd poured years of savings into, only to have it handed to my brother Daniel like a shiny wedding gift. Pulling into the driveway, the sight hit me like a punch. The lawn, once pristine, was overgrown and patchy, the curtains drawn tight, and a glaring orange foreclosure notice was taped to the front door. My heart raced, not with panic, but with a strange mix of vindication and fury. Their perfect plan had crumbled, and now they needed me. Before I could even knock, the door flew open, and my mom rushed out, her hair unkempt, dark circles under her eyes. She grabbed my arm, her voice trembling with relief. "Irene, thank God you're here," she said, as if I'd come to save them out of the goodness of my heart. I pulled back, crossing my arms. "What's going on?" My dad appeared next, rubbing his forehead like he was nursing a migraine, with Daniel lurking in the doorway, arms crossed, his face a mix of annoyance and shame. The air was thick with tension, and I wasn't about to let them off easy. "Someone explain," I said, my voice steady, despite the storm brewing inside me. My mom wrung her hands, her eyes darting to my dad before she spoke. "It's the mortgage, Irene. The bank's threatening foreclosure. We're behind on payments." The words landed like a brick. Foreclosure. I glanced at Daniel, whose jaw tightened as he avoided my gaze. "How far behind?" I asked, my tone sharp. Silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable, until my mom whispered, 5 months. 5 months. That wasn't just falling behind, that was a disaster. I let out a hollow laugh, the pieces clicking into place. "I never missed a payment," I said, staring at my dad, who looked away. Turning to Daniel, I pressed, "How did this happen?" He bristled, muttering, "It's not my fault. The bank's overreacting." But I knew better. Daniel's gambling his sports bets, his poker nights had always been a problem. I'd suspected my parents covered for him, but now, with my house in his hands, he'd blown it all. $18,000, they admitted, was what it would take to save the house. My mom's voice broke as she pleaded, "You have to help us, Irene. This is your home, too." I almost laughed again. My home? The one they'd given away like it was nothing? The one they'd told me to move on from? I tilted my head, letting the weight of their words hang. As an entrepreneur, I'd learned to negotiate from a place of strength. And right now, I held all the cards. "I'll pay it," I said, watching my mom's face light up with hope. "But I have conditions," my dad frowned, sensing a trap. "Irene, what are you—" I cut him off, my voice calm but unyielding. "If I'm paying off your debt, the house becomes mine. You'll sell it to me. Cheap. A fraction of its worth." Shock rippled through them. Daniel's face twisted with anger. "You're trying to steal my house," he snapped. I raised an eyebrow. "Your house? The one you couldn't pay for?" My parents exchanged glances, their faces pale. They had no leverage, no money, no options, just a foreclosure notice breathing down their necks. "You'd really do this?" my mom asked, her voice small. I held her gaze. Yes. For years, I'd been the responsible one. The one who fixed their messes while they propped up Daniel. Not this time. After a long silence, my dad exhaled, defeated. "Fine. We'll sign the papers." I nodded, my heart pounding but my resolve unshaken. This wasn't just about the house, it was about reclaiming what I'd earned, what they'd taken. I wasn't their backup plan anymore. I was taking control, and they'd soon learn what it cost to underestimate me. I didn't let myself breathe easy until every document was signed, sealed, and notarized. As a those 5-year-old entrepreneur who'd spent years hustling as a freelancer, I knew better than to trust promises, especially from the family who'd betrayed me. My parents had convinced me to put my hard-earned house under their name for legal reasons, only to gift it to my brother Daniel as a wedding present. That betrayal had left me with nothing but my grit and determination. Now, after paying off their $18,000 mortgage debt to save the house from foreclosure, I made sure the title was mine, no loopholes, no second chances for them to pull the rug out again. Sitting at the dining table, the same one where they'd announced their decision to give my home away, I felt a quiet triumph. The deed was in my name, and for the first time, I held the power. I slid a folded letter across the table to Daniel, his brow furrowing as he picked it up. "What's this?" he asked, his tone wary. I leaned back, calm, but resolute. "Your 1-month eviction notice." The room went still, the air thick with shock. Daniel let out a disbelieving laugh, shaking his head. You're joking. I tilted my head, my voice steady. Do I look like I'm joking? He skimmed the letter, his smirk fading as the reality sank in. My mom gasped, reaching for the paper as if she could undo it. Irene, sweetheart, we never meant for this, she stammered, her eyes wide with panic. I raised an eyebrow. Never meant for what? For me to take back what's mine? Sophia, Danielle's fiancée, finally spoke, her voice sharp with desperation. Where are we supposed to go? I met her gaze, unflinching. Maybe your generous in-laws will take you in, I said, turning to my parents. Since you thought Daniel deserved this house more than me, I'm sure you'll open your doors to him. My dad's face darkened, his voice low. Irene, this is low. I almost laughed. Low? After. They'd taken my life's savings, my dream, and handed it to Daniel like it was nothing? No, I said, my tone icy. Taking my house was low. This is just fixing your mistake. Daniel slammed the letter down, his face red with rage. You can't do this. But I could, and I had. The house was legally mine, and they had no ground to stand on. My mom's voice trembled as she tried one last plea. We're family, Irene. Families don't do this to each other. I leaned forward, my hands pressed against the table, my eyes locked on hers. Families don't do what you did to me. She flinched, and for a moment, the weight of her choices hung between us. For the next 4 weeks, they tried everything to change my mind. Daniel sent angry texts, accusing me of ruining his life. Sophia called, sobbing, claiming they had nowhere to go. My parents alternated between guilt trips and pleas, insisting it was all a misunderstanding. But I'd heard enough. I'd spent years being the responsible one, the one who fixed their messes while they propped up Daniel's failures. Not anymore. I ignored their calls, deleted their messages, and focused on my work building my brand, pitching clients, growing my freelance career. On the final day of the eviction notice, I drove back to the house. The driveway was chaos. Moving boxes piled high, Daniel and Sophia arguing by their car, her wiping angry tears. My parents were there, helping them load up, their faces heavy with defeat. Daniel and Sophia were moving in with them poetic justice, I thought. I rolled down my window, my voice light but firm. All packed up? Daniel spun around, his face flushed with fury. You're a real piece of work, you know that? I smiled, unfazed. And you're a terrible tenant. Guess we're both learning something today. My mom stepped forward, her eyes pleading. Irene, please don't do this. I looked at her, my expression unreadable. You told me I'd find another place, remember? Now it's your turn. I stepped out of my car, walked to the porch, and crossed my arms. You made your choice. Now live with it. With that, I stepped inside my house, and shut the door behind me. The silence was deafening, but it felt right. For the first time in years, I was home, and no one could take that from me. If this story hit home for you, if you've ever had to fight for what's yours or stand up to those who let you down, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share your story. Where are you watching from? And what's the toughest lesson you've learned about family or fairness? And if you're inspired by stories of grit, triumph, and taking back control, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss the next one. Let's keep this conversation going, because no one gets to dim your shine.